Right now, the USSR has hit the jackpot. There's a blackout in Russia. This is a triumph for Ukraine. Russia has descended into hell. Factories are shutting down. Cities are plunged into darkness. And all of this is happening at this very moment. The Kremlin is in a panic. Winter is coming and there's no electricity. Shock! America has turned around. Tomahawks are flying. This blew up the Kremlin. A sensational decision has shaken the entire world. Moscow is in the crosshairs. Putin is already feverish. Crimea is on fire. Russia's air defense simply collapsed, and this strike by the Ukrainian armed forces was decisive. A sensation, the weapons breakthrough of the century, the secret has been revealed. Germany and Kyiv have done it. This is the weapon that will change everything on the front lines. The latest systems are already on their way, and Germany is supplying more and more to the Ukrainian armed forces. China has delivered a sudden strike. 3 mysterious satellites have been spotted over the deadly zone. Beijing is playing along with the Kremlin. The West remains silent. No one expected this. A celebration that turned into a nightmare. While the dictator was blowing out candles on his birthday, something he had hidden for decades leaked online. Putin's family secret has rocked Russia. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hot spot. Urgent, Russia is in blackout. A triumph in the Ukrainian armed forces. Something incredible has happened. Drones and missiles are destroying power plants deep inside Russia. An energy apocalypse has engulfed the regions. Putin's empire is collapsing before our eyes. Millions of Russians could be left without heat and electricity if the Kremlin does not capitulate on Ukraine's terms. All the details coming up next.
8 airports closed, fires from Tuapse to Nizhny Novgorod, 251 drones over 16 regions. From October 5th to 6th, Russia faced the largest Ukrainian drone attack in the past 6 months. A strike was carried out on the power plant in Kyiv, Bryansk region. Power outages began there. And in Belgorod, there was a blackout. A part of the city was left without electricity for a long time, and this isn't the first time.
And damn, the city just flickered. Good morning, dear friends. As a result of the overnight work by our power engineers and emergency services in several areas, there was a partial outage affecting 24 settlements and 5,400 residents.
On the eve of winter and the heating season, Russia, as usual, is striking at Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And now, for the first time in the 3.5 years of war, Kyiv is not only threatening retaliatory strikes, but actually carrying them out.
If they threaten a blackout in Ukraine's capital, then the Kremlin should know there will be a blackout in Russia's capital as well.
Any action by Russia aimed at harming Ukraine provokes a symmetrical response. This also applies to the energy sector.
The president said it absolutely correctly. We will find both the means and the weapons, and we will carry out these operations. They will definitely realize that this way they will not gain any advantage. Any action by Russia will definitely be met with a counteraction. Andriy Inatov, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
Blackouts in Russian regions and even in Moscow are quite possible. And there are several reasons for this. One of them, of course, is strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine on the power system. And the second is the sanctions that are already in effect, and accordingly, the inability to purchase spare parts and equipment. And the existing equipment is degrading and becoming unusable.
Russia's energy sector today is a powder keg. The power deficit has reached 25 gigawatts. This is not an isolated failure, but a systemic collapse. And this is even before any systematic strikes have occurred, which Russia itself is bringing closer. Through its actions against our energy sector, instead of investing in its own thermal and hydroelectric power plants, Moscow is losing reserves due to sanctions and aging equipment. Andrei Kovalenko, head of the Center for Defense Strategies.
If Ukraine starts systematically striking thermal and power plants across all regions of Russia, as happened in the Belgorod region on the night from Sunday to Monday, it will be extremely difficult to restore the Russian energy sector. Currently, 42 regions of Russia are already introducing restrictions on consumption during peak hours in the center of the country. In Siberia and the Far East, an energy shortage is felt everywhere. And that's even without any capacities being knocked out. When Russians destroy Ukraine's energy sector, we have a safety net. We receive kilowatts from the EU as well as spare parts for restoration. In turn, Russia does not have such assistance. Their energy workers can only rely on themselves. And as the latest strike in the south showed, Russia is facing a very long, really cold and dark winter.
Shock. Tomahawks are already on their way. Trump blew up the White House with his statement. You have to hear this. Drone apocalypse. Crimea is on fire. Russia's air defense is powerless against the storm in the south. These details will surprise you. Scandal. Freed prisoners are being sent to the slaughter. Putin has taken an extreme step. The resonance is tearing Russia apart. All the details are in the report.
Tomahawks will soon be in Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has practically made up his mind about supplying the missiles.
In a way, I've made a decision, almost. I think I need to know what they're going to do with them, where they're going to launch them. I guess I should ask that question.
At the same time, the Russian dictator previously stated that such a decision by the US would destroy relations between Moscow and Washington.
The effect of using Tomahawks, even if the transfer of Typhoon launchers is not on a massive scale, will have catastrophic consequences for the Russian economy. This, I emphasize once again, is a signal in action from the Russian Federation, in other words, coercion to peace. That's why the American president's statement is of a similar nature. He makes it clear, I've made my decision, but the next move is yours.
But even without Tomahawks, things are still hitting the Russians in Crimea. Everything keeps burning. The Ukrainian armed forces carried out a series of strikes on military and fuel infrastructure targets on the peninsula. Drones attacked the personnel quarters of one of the Russian army's units. Unmanned aerial vehicles also struck an S-400 air defense radar station near the city of Jankoy. Drones also paid a visit to the Russian city of Tyumen, which is located 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine. The Zelensky oil refinery located in the Antepina district came under attack. Meanwhile, on the front in the Luhansk region, the Ukrainian armed forces drone units destroyed a rare and expensive Zhitel electronic warfare station. Against the backdrop of attacks on infrastructure targets in the aggressor country, the Russians have begun to strengthen the defenses of their nuclear test site on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago.
This is a legitimate target, and I should note that the strengthening of the air and missile defense system is happening against the backdrop of recent successful attacks by Ukrainian UAVs, including those on Tyumen. The distance is about 2,000 kilometers. Before this, a drone from the main directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine set a historic record by striking Russian oil refineries. The range for striking the target is about 2,000 kilometers. 1,000 kilometers. That's why the Russians fully understand that striking this military facility will have not only military, but above all, political and informational significance.
In addition, Moscow has begun the first phase of preparations for a possible war with NATO, according to the Institute for the Study of War. The Russians may stage a provocation under a false flag. This is evidenced by the intensification of the information and psychological campaign by foreign alliance members.
They are trying to push through their plan to regulate the war in Ukraine, but on Russian terms. And it is precisely this that is connected to the escalation of tensions directly at the borders with NATO countries, as well as in the airspace of NATO states. At the same time, the assertion by the Institute for the Study of War is, let's say, absolutely not in line with the reality of Russian actions.
Russia has repeatedly violated the airspace of NATO countries. Last week, during patrols in the Baltic states, alliance fighter jets took to the skies 3 times to intercept Russian aircraft.
In other words, this is a multi-pronged operation by Russian special services aimed at exerting military political pressure on European partners at a time when the nature of military technical assistance to our country is decreasing.
But how does Russia plan to fight NATO if it doesn't even have enough forces in Ukraine? Putin's command has started sending Russian soldiers who return from Ukrainian captivity back to the front.
In this way, the Russian Federation is trying to solve 2 issues for itself at once. The first is replenishing its personnel, and the second is to avoid the possibility of Ukrainian security service agents infiltrating its territory directly.
And those who manage to hide somewhere and avoid being sent back to the front continue to commit brutal crimes. Over 3 years of war, according to calculations based on court data, Russian soldiers who returned from Ukraine have killed and maimed more than 750 civilians.
At this very moment, a sensation from Berlin. Germany and Ukraine have launched a weapons production line. Lethal systems are already on the way. Moscow is in hysteria, Putin is furious. The new superweapon could destroy his plans. When will the first strike be launched, and how will it turn the tide at the front? All the exclusive details in our report.
Ukraine will receive 2 more Patriot systems from Germany by the end of 2025. Berlin will provide Kyiv with modern air defense systems with the support of Norwegian partners. The strengthening of Ukraine's air defense and the supply of missiles for these systems were further discussed by Volodymyr Zelensky and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz during their meeting on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen. They also discussed the implementation of the initiative, a list of Ukraine's priority requirements, which allows the purchase of American weapons with financial support from alliance member countries. In particular, Germany has already financed the 3rd package.
Germany is one of the leaders when it comes to providing air defense systems to the Ukrainian side. These are accordingly Patriot surface-to-air missile systems plus PAC-2 and PAC-3 missiles for the Patriots. This also includes IRIS-T systems. It should be noted that in addition, Gepards are also being supplied. These again are short-range air defense systems. It is quite remarkable that the German side is creating a layered air defense system.
Germany is the largest European donor of military aid to Ukraine, supporting the Ukrainian people so they can defend their freedom today and deter aggression in the future.
In addition to air defense systems, Germany has supplied heavy armored vehicles to the Ukrainian side. These are Leopard 2, Leopard 2A, and A6 tanks. These are among the most modern types of armored vehicles in their class. In addition, and accordingly, this includes the transfer of infantry fighting vehicles. Besides this, Germany, in cooperation with Denmark, is funding the transfer of strike weapons to the Ukrainian side. We're talking about the Caesar self-propelled howitzers. It is also worth mentioning separately the German company Rheinmetall. It is the world's largest producer of artillery shells. Germany has taken on the main responsibility for supplying 155mm artillery shells.
In September, Berlin launched a new initiative to purchase long-range drones together with Ukraine's defense industry for 300 million euros.
It was Germany that proposed the first innovative formula for supporting Ukraine of the Ukrainian defense industry and funding for long-range weapons programs. First and foremost, this concerns Ukrainian ballistics and the production of strike drones. The allocated amount is about $1.9 billion. This sum is sufficient to scale up the production of strike drones and the Ukrainian ballistic program, better known as Flamingo.
Germany has also moved to the next stage of providing military aid to Ukraine, which involves Berlin purchasing weapons for Kyiv from Ukrainian manufacturers, as well as joint production.
Germany fully understands that the Russian Federation plans to expand the theater of military operations, including on the European continent. And the first to face the threat of a Russian invasion will be Germany itself, specifically the Kaliningrad region. This is the former Prussia, which is currently, albeit temporarily, part of the Russian Federation.
Since the beginning of the war, the German government has provided Ukraine with assistance totaling more than 50 billion euros.
If in 2022 Germany spent 1.6 billion euros on aid to Ukraine, then by 2023 this amount had reached about 5 billion euros. And accordingly, in 2024 this amount has already reached about 7.5 billion euros. For 2025, the planned amount of military technical assistance to Ukraine is about 9 billion euros. Moreover, a separate and distinct budget item is specifically allocated for funding the production of Ukraine's crucial ballistic program and its long-range strike drones.
Germany plays an important role in NATO's collective defense, leads the alliance's forward land forces, conducts air patrols over the Baltic Sea, and also ensures maritime security by protecting critical infrastructure and strategic transport routes.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Putin has assembled a foreign legion of death. A sensational statement from the White House. The truth has been leaked online. You will be shocked when you find out whom Putin has recruited into his army. How is Russia turning mercenaries into cannon fodder? Watch right now.
There are new additions among the allies fighting for Russia, this time from distant Latin America, Cuba.
They have been actively fighting continuously since the early 1960s, specifically when Fidel Castro initially came to power in Cuba. Cuban soldiers also fought extensively in various parts of Latin America as well. Then Fidel Castro had the idea of landing the Cuban army elsewhere. To start an uprising in Africa, to make all of Africa communist, there were such delusional ideas. So for Cubans, given the country's absolute poverty, war is one of the ways for them to, in a sense, earn money.
According to classified U.S. State Department documents reviewed by Reuters, Havana is not just supporting the Kremlin's policy. It could have sent up to 5,000 of its citizens to fight in the war against Ukraine.
I knew the contract was real when I arrived. The Russian Federation brought me here. Everyone here knew why they came. I know this for sure. Everyone knew they were coming to war.
This is Enrique Gonzalez. He joined the ranks of the Russian army to make some money by killing Ukrainians.
I
found out my son had been recruited the day he left. I don't know how this process happened because he never told me anything about it. I realized it when he was at the airport. He called me and told me everything.
The active recruitment of Cubans for the war began back in 2023. After the Russian dictator signed a decree allowing foreigners who joined the army to obtain Russian citizenship through an expedited process, dozens of Cubans rushed to join the war.
Poverty forces people to do it. If we didn't live in such poverty, I'm sure these people wouldn't have gone to Russia. But as it is, you work and work and work. My husband worked his fingers to the bone in Cuba, but one day he told me, I can't take it anymore. I asked him what had happened. He replied, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. My husband was like that.
According to available information, recruitment centers are located in different regions. Candidates are promised salaries ranging from $1,500 to $2,500 a month, citizenship or residency, benefits in case of injury, and other privileges. For some companies, Moscow creates entire package deals. Payment, housing, legalization. All of this makes the offer attractive to economically vulnerable people.
The method of luring foreign soldiers is quite simple. They target the most prominent countries. That is, Latin America or Africa, Asian countries, I even mean North Korea. They offer more or less competitive payments and people are willing to go fight. The question is not only about the Cubans, of whom about 5,000 are fighting. The figures that are currently circulating widely online specifically mention approximately 3,000 North Korean military personnel and also several thousand additional mercenaries from various African countries.
Intermediaries, including travel agencies, are recruiting thousands of foreign mercenaries for what is called Russia's Elite International Battalion. They use flashy advertising campaigns, promises of high earnings, and tricks when signing contracts. Recruitment mainly takes place through Telegram, according to the Los Angeles Times.
The advertisement was simple. Sign up for a year to fight on Russia's side in the Special Military Operations Zone, that is, in the war in Ukraine, and receive citizenship, free medical care, money, and land. This is reported in the Los Angeles Times article.
But not everything is done honestly for everyone. Contracts for foreigners are often drafted in such a way that they cannot fully understand them. No translator is provided and there is no Wi-Fi. After arriving at the front, requests to terminate the contract require a payment of up to $6,000. Another method used by recruiters is through student and tourist visas. Many foreigners initially come to Russia on these visas and then sign a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. They are met by brokers and Russian officers right at the airports. To motivate new mercenaries, recruiters publish messages about supposed victories of the Russian army while concealing defeats. Despite all the risks, foreigners' interest does not disappear. Meanwhile, in the United States, diplomatic efforts are being intensified to neutralize the Cuban factor in Russia's war against Ukraine. The Donald Trump administration is mobilizing American diplomats to fight against the resolution calling for the lifting of long-standing trade embargoes on Cuba. State Department documents emphasize that Cuba uses international initiatives, such as the annual UN resolution, to present itself as a victim of sanctions, even though in reality its citizens are involved in combat operations on the side of the aggressor.
The Cuban regime has failed to protect its citizens from being used as pawns in the Russian-Ukrainian war, a State Department representative stated.
Every recruited soul is not just a number in the statistics. For the Kremlin, it's a chance to get ahead. Moscow is systematically expanding the pool of foreigners willing to fight for its interests. For the terrorist state, such people are nothing more than cheap labor and cannon fodder. For the mercenaries, it's a chance to make easy money.
Extrina, this surprised everyone. A global sensation, a sharp turn from the Celestial Empire. Beijing is leaking data to the Kremlin. Experts are sounding the alarm. This is no longer neutrality. This is direct involvement in the war. 3 Chinese satellites were detected right over the zone of the deadly strike. What is China hiding and why is the world silent? Watch right now.
China continues to pretend that it is maintaining neutrality in Russia's war with Ukraine, but in reality it is spying from space, passing information to the Kremlin. For
China has developed unique relationships, that's the rule.
During the Russian night strike on Ukraine on October 5th, it was specifically Chinese activity that was observed over the western regions. According to the monitoring service Heaven Above, which tracks satellite movements, at least 3 Chinese reconnaissance satellites of the Yogan 33 series were circling over Lviv and neighboring regions. These iron spies managed to make 9 orbits during the night. In the morning, another one joined them, capable of conducting optical reconnaissance. Its mission was to make 7 more passes during the day.
China has managed to create a fairly extensive group of reconnaissance satellites. It uses this information and provides it to Russia.
The satellites' orbits were at low altitude, which allowed them to obtain clear, detailed images. Analysts do not rule out that such a coincidence in the timing of the route is not accidental at all. This may be evidence of intelligence cooperation between Beijing and the Kremlin, involving the exchange of data on the air situation, the location of air defense systems, and the movement of Ukrainian aviation. Ukrainian foreign intelligence confirms this.
There is evidence of a high level of cooperation between Russia and China in conducting satellite reconnaissance of Ukrainian territory with the aim of identifying and further investigating strategic targets for strikes. At the same time, as we have seen in recent months, these targets may belong to foreign investors.
As expected, the Chinese ministry quickly stated that it knows nothing about the transfer of satellite data to the Russians for missile strikes on Ukraine. Chinese diplomats emphasized that Beijing maintains a fair, objective, and impartial position regarding the Ukrainian crisis.
China is neither the party that started the Ukrainian crisis nor a participant in it. However, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council and a responsible state, we have always maintained an objective and impartial position, actively promoted reconciliation and negotiations, and this approach has been widely recognized by the international community.
Yes, in the official rhetoric of the PRC, there is still no place for the word war to describe what Putin has unleashed in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Yaogan satellites continue to observe Ukraine from orbits about 700 kilometers high, completing a full revolution around the Earth every hour and a half. Officially, they are studying natural resources and preventing natural disasters. But in practice, these are military devices equipped with radars capable of seeing even through clouds, smoke, and even at night.
I want to emphasize once again that Russian-Chinese cooperation on the international stage is undoubtedly one of the key factors of stability in the world, of strategic stability.
These satellites are a product of a new generation of Chinese intelligence launched in 2022 to 2023. They provide high-precision surveillance with quality close to that of Western systems.
China, like the United States, has this real-time satellite reconnaissance system. The Russian Federation does not have real-time capability. They have GLONASS, which does not fully cover the globe. There aren't enough satellites in orbit to completely encircle the Earth's surface. And they can't operate in real time. They don't have that kind of reconnaissance. But China does, and China provides data for target selection and missile strikes. I have no doubt that they also provide the results of the strikes. China transmits this to the Russian Federation in real time as well.
Back in 2024, American intelligence reported that China was providing Russia with all the necessary intelligence information, which is used not only in the war against Ukraine, but also to monitor NATO military activity in Europe. In addition, in 2022, a company affiliated with the Wagner PMC purchased 2 Chinese satellites for intelligence gathering, signing a contract worth more than $30 million. Since the spring of 2024, Beijing has increased its military support for Moscow. This is not only about intelligence, but also about supplying optics for military equipment, rocket fuel, and machinery for tank production.
Russia currently accounts for a significant quarter of China's total trade turnover. This particular situation truly matters to everyone across the globe.
China also supplies Russia with special chemicals, gunpowder, and equipment for 20 military factories of the Russian Federation. In the Shahed drones that Russia is using to strike Ukrainian cities in 2025, new protected antennas with markings in Chinese have been found. While Beijing, led by Xi Jinping, denies a close friendship with dictator Putin, by the beginning of 2025, up to 80% of the critical electronics for Russian drones are of Chinese origin.
Shock and scandal on Putin's birthday. All of Russia is in an uproar. Unexpected news about the dictator's children has surfaced. You will be surprised when you hear about the Black Day for the Kremlin. The noose around Putin's neck is tightening. Trump and Europe have prepared an explosive little gift. All the details coming up.
The bloody dictator Putin is celebrating his 73rd birthday today. The Kremlin's parrots are congratulating their patron with endless texts and pompous videos.
I believe in the spiritual strength of the Russian people. Their spirit. Mine. Their fate. My fate. Their suffering. My sorrow. Their flourishing. My joy.
But behind all this show are the real gifts that Putin has arranged for himself and his people. The first is from US President Trump, who once again announced that he will send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine.
Yes, I've almost made up my mind if you think about it. Yes, I think I want to know what they're doing with them, where they're sending them. I think I'll have to ask that question. We'll see, but at the same time, I don't want an escalation.
Regarding those same Tomahawk missiles and the US authorization to strike targets deep inside Russia, for now this looks more like intimidation, similar to what we saw in the context of the Graham Amendment bill, which appeared right before the first meetings in Turkey.
But that's not the worst, judging by what's happening in Russia right now. For example, China, under the guise of partnership and friendship, has already effectively annexed a piece of Siberia, marking it as its own territory on new maps.
In Chinese terms, the dragon is unlikely to stay within its own country, simply because, by the way, it actually has certain historical claims to a significant part of our Far East. And that's a fact.
Then Xi Jinping of China literally spat in Putin's face by taking away from Russia that very great victory.
China and Russia, being the main theaters of military action in World War II, made a decisive contribution to the victory over fascism, and thus laid the cornerstone of the post-war world order.
In fact, Russia has no other choice. Either be friends with China now or face economic collapse and, as a consequence, political, military, and all other kinds of collapse at the same time.
Russia has literally turned into a raw materials appendage of China. By the way, the head of the foreign ministry, Lavrov, came up with a very apt metaphor calling Putin Xi Jinping's lackey. Well, he does know a thing or two about horses.
As they say in the East, guests follow the host's lead. That's why all the programs, of course, depend on the gracious proposals that the Chinese president and his team made to our president.
Russian television is already showing segments on how to find a Chinese husband. In Russian schools and government institutions, Chinese is being actively studied.
People are divided into two camps, those who want to learn and those who are skeptical about it and say, why do we need Chinese? We're not planning to go anywhere. I answer very simply, actually. I say, I'm not really teaching you Chinese here, but using the Chinese language to make you think with your head. And that skill will always come in handy.
In Russia, there's a real crisis. As one classic put it, no money, but you hang in there. Heads of largest banks complain debtors are increasing, people have nothing to pay back loans with.
The main reason for inflation here is high military spending. And the second reason, of course, which cannot be ignored when we talk about our current life, is of course the huge number of sanctions.
We are currently experiencing a profound and widespread crisis within the global commodity markets, characterized by a dramatic and sustained decline in prices for many of our most crucial and strategically important export goods. Furthermore, our domestic labor market is unequivocally and demonstrably overheated, showing clear signs of unsustainable growth and demand.
It is obvious that Putin's economy has huge problems, and every month their budget deficit amounts to 1 trillion rubles. And in just the first 7 months of this current year, The budget deficit has already significantly exceeded the figures that were originally planned for the entire fiscal year.
More than 20 regions of Russia are without gasoline due to strikes on oil refineries, and the situation is especially dire in the temporarily occupied territories.
You know, this situation is not only in our region, but what I want to say is that unfortunately the severity is only increasing for us, and just because a decision has been made does not mean that fuel will appear this week.
The saddest Russian governor, Glodkov, complains that in Belgorod region, due to military actions, there is no electricity and that this situation awaits other Russian regions as well. In fact, on his birthday, Putin has nothing to celebrate because in all 73 years of his existence, his entire legacy is military disgrace, devastation, and the poverty to which he has brought his own country.
That's all for now. For more major breaking news from the front lines, tune in to the next episode.